you don't have a disability or chronic illness, then you probably need to hear this. I was born with a disability, and I've had my share of people coming up to me talking about my condition, especially when I have my prosthetic on. I'm sure you've seen on the internet people with disabilities or chronic illnesses where it's a motivating story, it's inspiring, or it's sad. It makes you get all the feels. This is a topic I wanted to talk about for a while. It's called inspiration porn. Inspiration porn is where people with disabilities are objectified to make people without disability feel better about themselves or feel a certain way. If they can do it, so can you. It's because we think of people with disabilities as less than. Disabled people are looked at as tools of inspiration instead of people. The funny thing is, anyone with a disability, almost everything they do seems to be inspirational. Oh my god, he opened it with his mouth! That is so inspiring. MG, disabled guy petting a dog. So snap-worthy. That's the most inspirational shit I've ever seen! What the fuck? By now you probably understand that not everything a person with a disability does is inspirational. Sometimes it's just life. For me, I was born this way. But it's crazy how many people come up to me and see my arm and they think it's a rite of passage to come up to me and say, "Hey man, that's so inspiring. I don't know how you do it. I could never do it if I was you." That's the equivalent of you saying to me, "That's a really shitty situation and I could never do it, but you have to and that sucks." Like, how is that supposed to make someone with a disability feel? It almost seems as if people with disabilities are not looked at as human. They're looked at as less than. There's a specific picture I saw online of a kid asking a girl in a wheelchair to the prom. But on the picture or meme it said, he asked her to prom even in her condition. How motivating is that? Or how cool is that? That really bothered me because that implies he's a good person for asking a person with a disability to prom. Meaning a person who has a disability shouldn't be asked to prom, isn't normally asked to prom, basically is less than a human being. Now this guy was actually black. Can you imagine if we turned the tables? If that meme read something like, "How inspiring that this girl asked this guy to the prom and he's black." If that implied that black people were less than. Can you imagine if that person was an obese woman and it said, "How inspiring that this obese woman was asked to prom even though she's obese." Media would have a field day with it. But it happens all the time in people with disabilities. There are so many pictures and videos that people share of people with disabilities doing things, and the people aren't even tagged. They're not even mentioned. Because it doesn't matter who they are as a person, it just matters of what they look like. They go from human beings who have achieved things to objects and tools of motivation for able-bodied people. Sometimes it feels like disabled people just merely exist to help able-bodied people feel better about themselves. And when someone comes up to me and says, "Man, I can't even do that and I have both hands," to me that implies I shouldn't be able to do it because I'm less than them, or they're clearly better than me and I'm still doing good, so that's pretty motivating. It's crazy to think people talk like this. And I didn't even start realizing until a few people pointed out some of these quotes, you know, like, "What's your excuse?" and there's a girl with no legs. Well, she doesn't have an excuse. She also doesn't have a choice. That's her life. So when disability is thought to be some less than thing, or this thing like, "Damn, I'm so glad I don't have that. It could be worse. I could be disabled." What does that do for people with a disability who don't have a choice? All we're left to think is, wow, you're really happy you're not in my shoes, but what about me? To me, it's okay to feel inspired by something you see. This is where I kind of feel on the flip side of the coin. But if you're not going to understand what you're really trying to say, if you're inspired by someone breaking a record and they happen to have a prosthetic, that's super inspiring. You know what also is inspiring? Someone without a disability breaking a record. Make sure when you talk about people and their condition, it's not solely to serve you in the way you feel. You're gonna start seeing it more in the media as you pay attention to it. Inspiration porn is low-key offensive to disabled people. Unless it's worth posting about, give them credit. Why is it inspiring? Now ask yourself, what's so inspiring about a kid, let's say with Down syndrome getting asked to the prom? Is it inspiring because you believe he shouldn't have been asked to the prom, and because he did, that able-bodied person is such a good person for asking the less than human being to go to prom? Because if so, that's pretty screwed up, don't you think? We need to normalize disability. I think we need to normalize that sometimes things happen, whether you are disabled or overweight or underweight or black or white or yellow or Asian or whatever. We don't choose how we're born. We choose what we do with it. Let's start treating people as humans, you know, and stop dividing everything. I almost want to throw this in with inspiration porn, but this is part of my daily life. People come up to me when I have my prosthetic on, and they want to ask me all kinds of questions. You know, obviously, was I in the military? They want to say how cool it is. They want to be like, man, that's so badass. You know, what's it made of? Like, they just feel free to open up questions about my prosthetic. Personally, I don't mind, but the more I take a step back, zoom out, and think about it, imagine if I went to someone who was overweight and I was like, man, that's so crazy how large you are. You are just so large. I think it's so cool. Honestly, no offense, it's super cool how much space you take up. See how that's kind of screwed up? Now the funny part is when I take my prosthetic off and I'm just, you know, all disabled in public, people avoid me like the plague. I've literally seen it where I'm going down a grocery aisle and they turn around. Their eyes just shift because they want to make sure that they don't make eye contact or look at me. Because this isn't as cool as this. This is not an invitation to talk. This is. Whether this is a wheelchair, a crutch, condition, anything. For some reason, certain disabilities are very inviting for people to be invasive and be inspired by something we never asked for. Be mindful when you're talking with people with disabilities. They're not defined by their disability, so you damn sure better not try and define them by their disability. By saying something they do on a day-to-day basis is inspiring just because they have to do it and there's no other choice. Disabled guy pilot. And then come on. Come on. I gotta change that one. It's like Chris Rock, but like I don't even know what.